The NFL starts tonight. All right, the wait is over. The months of just fiending for NFL action, it's here. But if you're fiending for New York Jet action, we still gotta wait. We gotta wait some time, prime time to be exact, Monday night. So let's talk about that game. All right, to every game there are two sides. There's one team and there's the other team. Tonight, today, right here on Boy Green Meets Wudi, we got both sides represented on a third party Thursday. Stay here, right now. Boy Green Meets Wudi.
Zoinks! It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans.
Field Yates, baby. Field Gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show.
Come on, people. Connor Rodgers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor Gosh darn Sycamore, baby, for me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever been.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas.
Welcome to another episode of Boy Green Meets Wudi. It is your boy James Wudi right here. We got Boy Green, right? The boy who became king right here. And it's Third Party Thursday. This is my favorite day of the week. And this is the start of something special, okay? Because it is the football season. So that means that every week, besides week 12, there will be a guest here representing their team as we look to go head-to-head against teams each week. We'll have a representative from their nation. And to start us off with a bang, we are going to bring the noise. What type of noise you talking about? The Niners noise. Please welcome Peter Panessy from the Niners noise to talk about that team that was just in the Super Bowl. Where we want to go, they were just there this year. Peter, how you doing?
100% not bad. Getting ready for tonight. It's going to be a long anticipated start to the season. It's finally here. And, what an opening week for football. I mean, not just tonight's game, but, capping it off Monday night, Jets, 49ers. There's one of, I don't know how many storylines you want to pick there. I can think of at least like 5 or 6 that are like, oh, that's the storyline. So looking forward to it.
Well, there's so much to get into here, and we could go to a lot of different directions here, but I guess I'll start here. Jet fans, for the most part, are pretty optimistic about a healthy Aaron Rodgers and what that can look like, despite coming off a serious injury and despite being 40 years of age. But I'm curious how another team views him, especially one that's got such a history with Aaron Rodgers. Peter, what is the pulse of 49ers media / fans on what they're expecting from Aaron Rodgers? They say, he's just some old man coming in here. Like he's washed. It's over. Or do they view him as this potential MVP kind of guy? Or is it something in the middle? What is the temperature on Aaron Rodgers from the other side?
I'd probably say it's cautious optimism. And I'll put it that way simply because the things you mentioned before are there, right? It's a year off, more or less, without doing much on the football field. It's the fact that he's not just on the wrong side of 30, but on the wrong side of 40. And you have those things in mind. It's a long travel to the East Coast, all the other factors that play into it. But there's also the other motivation, right? Rodgers is eager to get back out on the field, show that, hey, what happened last year, that's not going to slow me down. He's going up against his boyhood team, right? I mean, he's from that direction, about 2 hours that way. So, I'm here in Northern California, up outside of Sacramento. So he's not far from here. Primetime game. And then plus two, despite the fact San Francisco's had his number in playoffs for quite some time, Rodgers, I think, is 6-3 against the 49ers in regular season games.
That's correct.
So you have a showdown like this, and I recall a couple of years ago, I think it was, when the Packers visited the Niners and Rodgers and Devontae Adams went off late. in a primetime showdown. It was Sunday night. Like that happens, and I think that's still pretty fresh on everyone's mind. So sure, age, injury, rust, if you want to call it that, might play a role, but with the great ones, you don't count them out until they're out.
Yeah, fair enough. Again, it's been 20 months. That's the time frame since he's last played a full football game, so it's been a long-ass time. Wudi, go ahead.
We're going to flip it to the other side of the ball, talking 49ers offense and Jets defense. According to ESPN's Rich Cimini, that is the league leader in offensive yards per play of last year versus the defensive leader in offense and defensive yards per play. So that is the classic, right? Unstoppable force, immovable object. How do you feel about that matchup? Now it's a new year, right? A lot of your pieces have been retained. Didn't look like it for a little bit, right? Down to the wire for a lot of the pieces. But now that everybody's intact, we're still waiting on Reddick. How do you feel about that matchup heading into Monday night?
Well, I'll tell you where one to watch. And I just wrote something about this over at Niner Noise. But the Niners have a rookie starting right guard, Dominic Pooney, third-round selection out of Kansas. Great training camp, great preseason. Really promising. Everybody's really high on him. Him versus Quinnen Williams. You want to find a microcosm of the game. That's where to look. Pooney did really well in pass protection, is kind of what he's known for, but the Niners are a run-first team. I wouldn't put too much stock into that because of the outside zone scheme the Niners like to run. But that's going to be where I am most intrigued. Plus, kind of if you want to expand out a little bit more, historically speaking, the 49ers offense early in the year under Kyle Shanahan tends to get off a little slow, right? It's a very, and Robert Saleh would know this, it's a very complex system, very innovative. It takes a while to master. And usually, the first couple of weeks, it's like the defense might have to carry the load. Now, the 49ers defense is great, so don't worry about that. But in that case, it might be advantage Jets to at least keep Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, all those guys contained for a while. And especially if things are a little troublesome up front. I think it was Pro Football Focus. They ranked the Jets defensive line number 1. 49ers were number 2 on the defensive line. But the Niners offensive line isn't necessarily the strength. Trent Williams is a Hall of Famer. Dominic Pooney is promising. But aside from that, it's kind of like, So that to me is the X factor, especially that particular matchup.
Let me stay on the offensive line. Now, Peter, I was on the wrong side of 49ers Twitter recently this week. I provided a lot of bulletin board material. When Trent Williams was announced he was coming back, I said, wow, an out-of-football shape guy protecting the blind side of Brock Purdy. Great. And then a lot of people said, out of shape, you idiot. He's been benching in the middle of his sleep. I said, oh, no, I thought out of football shape, like a guy that he had been holding out. Obviously, he's the best left tackle in football. He's been an all-pro like 3 years in a row. He's terrific. He's phenomenal. But even a 36-year-old Trent Williams or a 24-year-old or a 29-year-old Hassan Reddick, who's also has been holding out this entire time, I'd feel the same way about him. There's just nothing to quite replicate, the live bullets of football. Do you anticipate any rust whatsoever? And did I deserve to be yelled at and rocks thrown at me on social media for that take?
Join the club if you haven't upset 49ers Twitter at some point in your life. You haven't lived.
There it is.
Even if you write about the team. I would still take a rusty Trent Williams over probably 95% of the tackles in the league. That said, there is an understandable drop-off from players that you would typically not worry about. Right? And Trent Williams is one of those guys you don't worry about. I mean, he never played in preseason, have limit, he always has rest days during the week, during the season, and even in training camp. It's like, yeah, he was out there for a little bit, Nick Bosa a year ago went through something similar during his own contract holdout, and deal got done right before the regular season began. He made a big impact during the season, and I don't want to get too deep into like, how much do stats matter and how much does overall impact matter? But statistically, he had a very down year for himself, like 10.5 sacks, I think, off the top of my head. But like, he led the league the year before. So, and he even admitted, he's like, hey, that holdout did impact me. Right. So it's there. You have to wonder a little bit about it. Now with Hassan Reddick probably not playing, he likely would have lined up on the right side of the 49ers offensive line anyway, where it's weakest. But like, probably better news for Williams to get back into football shape, if you would. So it's a slight regression. I don't know if it's necessarily like going to be a massive liability, like if it was like, a younger player who's not that savvy or anything like that. But that said, it's a concern. You're going to maybe see a few more pressures that you might not have otherwise seen. The muscle or the muscle memory, I guess, where it's like, oh, that was an uncharacteristic false start, something like that. Those are the things that, you could wind up seeing on Monday night that wouldn't necessarily have happened if he was just like, if he was present all off season.
Fair enough. Wudi, go ahead.
Absolutely. I'm going to go to the other holdout, major one is Ayuk, right? For the season. Now he was on my fantasy team last year. So, this is bittersweet to, see him now play against my beloved Jets. I have a 49ers friend, probably one of my best friends. He's a 49ers fan who actually says that Ayuk is the best receiver on the team. A, your thoughts on that. B, if we're talking sauce, matching up against, the team's best receiver, that's something that we've heard a lot in our Jets training camp. Is that Ayuk? Should we, should that be the game plan, or do you think Debo deserves the most of Sauce's attention?
No, you get spot on, or your friend did, but yeah, Ayuk is the best pure receiver. Debo Samuel is probably the more dynamic weapon, and not just in terms of like, oh, you can run the ball too. But a lot of the little things Debo does, Brandon Ayuk, and again, people who just look at the stats or be like, oh, he's a good receiver, but not great. Brandon Ayuk is one of the best receivers in the league right now against man coverage. So I mean, and Robert Saleh, I know that, remember that it's primarily zone. But, when you have the man coverage, Ayuk's route running and separation skills, there's clips on Twitter. You watch him just do a little break and all of a sudden the cornerback's left with broken ankles and looking around like, no one's around me anymore. He's the best pure wide receiver, bar none, without question. Sauce Gardner would be taking care of him, should be taking care of him. Now, how much that opens up things for Debo, Jawan Jennings, that's interesting, something to watch. But the reason why you would pin Sauce Gardner on an assignment there is because it'd be interesting to see what the holdout, how that impacted it. But Brandon Ayuk was one of Brock Purdy's favorite targets last year. The chemistry between them was undeniable. It was like, dude, they were on the same page all year long, and that's kind of one of the reasons why during all the trade rumors and everything, I'm like, why would you do that? Like, you're all in now. Like, you've got the best roster possible to win a Super Bowl. Why would you take away your young quarterback who's very good, still developing, but still very good? Why'd you take away his favorite weapon? Like, why would you do that? That doesn't make sense. But anyway, so that would be the assignment. And, that would be, if you're looking at like sort of the Bill Belichick way of thinking, take away the offense's favorite weapon and then make that quarterback, adjust accordingly. Now the Niners are built to do that because they've got, I don't know how many targets, but take away the favorite weapon. And so that would be, if I was Saleh, that's exactly what I would do.
And in the same breath, so I mentioned Trent Williams, and I threw all these rose petals at his feet. He's the best, all pro, all these different things. I can say and copy and paste, boop, boop, ditto, When you do one of those, it's like when my fiance wishes someone a happy birthday. I should have wished a happy birthday to. I just kind of comment under ditto. Like, I mean the same thing without actually going through the process of actually wishing it myself. I'll say all those things about Christian McCaffrey. We've had this calf thing where he missed all the preseason, but kind of to your point, like Trent Williams is a guy that doesn't play a lot in the preseason anyway. Maybe the same can be said for a guy like Christian McCaffrey, but he missed a lot of weeks of practice. I'm kind of curious. First off, there's no one looking out for Christian McCaffrey's health more than his family. It's me. I'm probably number one. I'm probably even number one over his family. They should probably rest this week and get ready for it's a long season, a very, very long season. He should be looking out for the health of everybody. But that aside, like what Christian McCaffrey are we going to get? Because it's similar. Salah spoke earlier today. He was asked about Mike Williams, who's this guy who's coming off a torn ACL. And a media member asked him, like, oh, boy, if he's feeling ready to go to play 60 snaps, are you going to play 60 snaps? He said, absolutely not. We've got a number in our head. He's only playing this number. I don't care how great he feels because we're thinking about the long term. Is that the same sort of mentality for Christian McCaffrey a little bit, that he will play insert amount? Or he's Christian McCaffrey. Dust him off, baby. We're going to get a lot of run CMC on Monday night.
Yes and no. And kind of like yes and no unrelated. So the injury that kept him out during the preseason, he admitted if it was like a regular season, he'd play through it. It was just like and Kyle Shanahan said much of the same. It's just like this is just precautionary. There's no reason to subject them to a lot of stuff like that. That said, one of Kyle Shanahan's other quotes was, "We have to protect him from himself." So that's, he probably want to go out there and carry the ball 30 times, right? But look, one of the things that the Niners really focused on during the offseason was developing their running back depth. It was kind of there, not really last season. Elijah Mitchell was banged up. Now he's out for the rest of this year already. But Jordan Mason, third-year undrafted free agent, who kind of did well last season. Everybody kind of knew this guy could be good. He's going to get an uptick. He got featured early in the preseason. Everybody like, where was this? He's going up against the Titans first stringers during that opening preseason game and just making Tennessee look. So I would expect a pitch count. I don't think it has much to do with the injury per se. Instead of, hey, Christian, we're expected to be there during January football. We're going to need you to be healthy for that. You're not going to lead the league in touches and all-purpose scrimmage yards this year, although fantasy owners would complain otherwise. Let's focus on your splits, right? So, I think they'll spell him quite a bit. Of course, when I've made predictions like that, next thing I know, he's got like 25 touches in the game. I'm like, clearly Kyle Shanahan's zigging when everybody else is zagging. But that's what I would think, is that he's going to be on a pitch count. But that might be the case for the entire season too.
Makes a lot of sense. Good, Woody.
Well, going back now to the other side, had a lot of Niners offense, Jets D. Now we're going to the other side, and I want to specifically highlight Travarius Ward, right? I think for Jets fans, I don't know if it's living rent-free as much in San Fran as it is for New York. The quote on Garrett Wilson, I don't even know who that is, all that type of stuff. And we love our Garrett. He's coming into this year, could be the 5th player in NFL history to start his career with 3 straight seasons of 80+ receptions and 1,000 yards. So we prop up our Garrett as much as we can. So to have somebody say they don't know who he is, how dare they? So my question to you is, how do you know who he is, and how do you feel about that matchup? Is that another matchup to highlight?
I know who he is because I do this for a living. I would probably say 75% of Niner fans don't. I don't think that's a slight. I think that's more of, we're over here on this side of the country, you're over there, we're in this conference, you're in that conference.
Sure.
We see you once every 4 years. That's cool. It reminds me of when Debo got into it with Aaron Donald of the Rams, because Aaron Donald had something very similar. It's like, hey, what'd you think? Post game thing, like, what'd you think of Debo? And Aaron Donald's like, who? And man, that went back and forth, and the two were jawing on each other on social media and everything like that. But that was relevant because it's within the division. It's like, oh, we see you twice a year. We know who you are. As far as the Wilson versus Ward matchup, I mean, that's one of those enticing things that are just so cool. If you were able to step back from a bias of one team or another, you're just like, cool. A weapon like Wilson, a shutdown guy like Ward. I think he had 21, led the league in pass breakups last year with like 21. Like most guys get like maybe 10, 15. That's a matchup, and Ward's going to be, he's in a contract here, so he's going to be extra motivated to cash in on that, whether it's with the Niners next year or somewhere else. So that's one of those ones where you're like, okay, this is cool. Niners secondary as a whole, a little bit overhauled during the offseason. Isaac Yiadom brought in as a free agent. He had an excellent training camp. So it's kind of like that number 2 boundary cornerback has been taken care of finally. So, it's weird to say this because it feels like for years it was never the case, but it almost feels like the Niners secondary is finally complete. Like maybe that's its strength for the first time in a long time. It used to be that was a weakness. So that's definitely a matchup worth watching on Monday night. Should be fun. Ward's had some jaw backs and forths with other players, but he's also very attuned to say, nothing personal, just having a little bit of fun. So whatever keeps you motivated. Sure. But yeah, definitely something fun to watch.
No question about it. Again, we're speaking with our boy here, covering all things Niner noise, and I've had him on the show before. I'm pretty sure this is the first time I've ever done a video version. Back in those days, I think it was just a phone call. Hey, Peter, how are you? It was probably a telegram. I don't remember what we were using back in those days, but
Smoke
damn
signals.
it. That's it. Yeah, pigeon carrier, beautiful. And now we're here in the 21st century. It's a beautiful place to be. One other storyline. I'm going to be honest. I don't know what to reference it as. Fun probably wouldn't be the word I would use, but the universe works in mysterious ways, as Rich Samini said earlier to Aaron Rodgers today, about Leonard Floyd being on the 49ers roster after last year being on the Bills roster and sacking Aaron Rodgers in the play in which he tore his Achilles. A big shout out, by the way. I tweeted up the clip earlier today, but Aaron Rodgers gave a really cool thing to Leonard Floyd, who, Leonard Floyd, for those who missed it, he was on the Adam Schefter podcast. He said he received death threats after sacking Aaron Rodgers, then getting home and going on his phone and stuff, and people lighting him up for saying, how could you do this to Rodgers? Screw you, screw your family, and all these other things. And that's really dark. That's a really dark part of social media. But I thought it was really cool of Rodgers today when he was asked at the end of his press conference about Leonard Floyd. He didn't take like jokes and a smirk. Like he just said, hey, man, I hope he doesn't feel at all responsible for anything that happened. He's an awesome player. I love him. We work out together during the offseason. So I thought that part of it was really cool. But I know that, the ESPN cameras and storyline, they won't be able to help themselves. I mean, there's just so much connective tissue with that Leonard Floyd story. Have you guys in 49ers land talked about that at all heading into week 1?
Slightly, it comes up, and it's just kind of like one of those mentions. I don't think it's not even. I don't think I know it's not as big of a storyline out here, just because it's not like Aaron Rodgers is quarterbacking the 49ers. If that was the case, then yes, it would be the storyline. The only thing that I might think it kind of reputable to would be how 49ers fans felt about the Eagles last year after Brock Purdy got his elbow destroyed, in NFC Championship game the season before. It's not really a big topic. It's not discussed too much. It's brought up. Floyd's been asked about it. Kind of entire different context aside it from being week 1. And, I think for the 49ers, their perspective on Floyd now, or at least 49ers fans, it's finally the number 2 pass rusher behind Nick Bosa, right? Like that's kind of that's what it is. 49ers been looking for that number 2 guy ever since 2019, right? D Ford, that didn't work. Drake Jackson, that didn't work. And so now here's a proven veteran who's had sustained success. Niners know him well because he played with the Rams for a while too. So that's more of the storyline. And then, oh yes, by the way, he faces off against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. You remember what happened last year after a sniff of snaps?
Yeah.
And that's about it, kind of the afterthought. So
Good.
I think most people out here will know that it'll get discussed on the broadcast. If you've got your Monday Night Football bingo card, that better be an option.
Yeah, right. Great.
Yeah. Shout out bingo if you win it. But yeah, that's one of those storylines that I mentioned. Like you could pick,
sure,
half a dozen ones and you can talk about, Javon Kinlaw. Whoa, hey, Robert Saleh bringing all these former 49ers over, which makes perfect sense. Why would you not? So yeah, that's one of the many storylines.
Which, by the way, just real quick before I throw it back over to Wudi, I remember, Peter, the reason why I brought you on was Saleh got hired by the Jets 4 years ago. And one of the questions I remember asking you when we had a conversation was like, man, how many guys are coming over? Who are some of those guys? And I remember a lot of the players that we were talking about that could naturally, and that happens whenever a new coach goes somewhere, that he brings people from his party, and he has, from Solomon Thomas to Javon Kinlaw most recently. Like they've brought in, Tevin Coleman, shout out to Tico, wherever the hell you are, buddy. All these guys over the last 4 years that they've been able to bring in. So it is really, really interesting. Wudi, go ahead.
Definitely with Leonard Floyd and him showing up. I'm not gonna lie. I have to respectfully disagree with PFF. I think they were assuming that Reddick was gonna be a Jet. So I'll give you guys number one with the D line there. Jets. I'm not sure what number, but anyway. Sorry, I just had to get it off my chest before moving on to the next. Where I think the Jets are still strong is that linebacker duo of C.J. Mosley, Quincy Williams. Look at the Niners linebacker duo, Fred Warner, beast. I think he's the best linebacker in football. I've talked about that with Boy Green. People in the comments don't really like when I say stuff like that, but I gotta be real. I gotta be real with it. But then the next half of that duo, Dre Greenlaw, we saw what happened in the Super Bowl. Definitely a big loss. Picked up Devondre Campbell. So I guess how are Niners fans feeling about that? Obviously, it's not a perfect replacement, but how are you guys feeling about that room and how that relates to this season?
Well, the good thing, you don't want to lose a player like Greenlaw. He's probably one of the most underappreciated
definitely
backers out there. He doesn't get the recognition across NFL circles that someone like Warner would. But then you look at like any sort of top ranking. I can't remember if it was Pro Football Focuses or the NFL's, but like they even still included Greenlaw in the top 10 or something like that, even though he's hurt. I'm just like, okay. You're not going to replace someone like that. Devondre Campbell was an all-pro with the Packers, admitted that he kind of hated it there after the last couple of years. And he was like, I'm so invigorated to play here. Downgrade. The thing, though, that I'll mention, though, for the 49ers, and this was so evident during training camp, the preseason, that linebacker room was deep. You look at guys and you're like, there is a player who could probably start who's going to be waived or cut. Released. Tatum Bethune, the 7th-round rookie from this year, he was excellent, and he made the roster. I think it was Jalen Graham, was second-year pro who was really sharp in the preseason. Like he was let go. D. Winters is a second-year pro who was phenomenal during the preseason. He might be someone, if Campbell struggles a little bit, you might see more of Winters, and I have a hunch that the Niners are kind of looking at Winters to be the guy who replaces Greenlaw long-term. Greenlaw, I think, is up for a new contract next year, and I don't know if the Niners will be able to afford to re-sign him. So Winters might be tabbed as that replacement. Campbell's a stopgap option. Let's call that what it is. He's older, 1-year deal. But that linebacker room's deep. Of course, playing alongside Fred Warner makes your life easier, but yeah, that's a deep room still. And that would be, something to see. Interesting to watch how this pans out over the next year or two, but it's still a big strength for San Francisco.
Let me go to just generic injury report because we've already mentioned a couple of guys potentially that either are out for the 49ers or the other side where they're going to be just fine after either missing some time or what have you. One of the ones I've heard other people bring up, but I'm not sure what his injury status is Hufanga. Is he good to go? And is there any other injuries you guys are monitoring heading into week one?
I was talking about this with the editor over at the Jet Press who works with me here at Fansided, and he's like, "So what's the scoop?" And I'm like, "We don't know." He's cleared, he's cleared, right? He's been off the, like, all that's good, but is he going to play? Like, no one knows. I think that's probably going to be one of those game time decisions. And of course, the one problem about having a Monday night game is usually, what happens on Wednesday as far as injury reports. We all now have to wait, until Thursday, end of the day, until practice is done before you get any comments. If I were to make a bet, I would say he doesn't play, that he's just kept in reserve, maybe even inactive, just to make sure. Right. George Odom and Jair Brown are probably going to be the starting safety. Is probably going to be the starting duo. Jair Brown is the guy who took over for Hufanga last year when Hufanga tore his ACL, and then rookie, and really caught on great. He picked off, I think, Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. So he's really sharp, and he's one of these young up and coming players who might be part of the core 49ers going forward when the salary cap catches up. But he's a guy to watch. George Odom, mostly a special teams guy, but looked really good in kind of more of a defensive role throughout camp in the preseason. So seems ready to seize that spot. One of the differences from a Robert Saleh defense when he was here, this came in more under D'Amico Ryan. So I'm sure Jets fans are so interested on how defensive changes the 49ers have made since Robert Saleh, but the safeties are a little bit more interchangeable out in San Francisco now, where it used to be when Saleh was here, it was the cover 3, single high. So you could switch the free and the strong a little bit more, although Hufanga's strength is more of that box safety, whereas Jair Brown, the guy who replaced him, can back up into a free safety spot. So a little more flexibility there, but I would probably side on Hufanga not playing instead of playing.
Okay, that was my lean anyway. I'm going to be honest, the lead. The question I've wanted to ask you this entire time, I've been holding in the holster, ready to unload it at any point. And it's simply this, and it's just been on my mind this entire time. This is a week 1 game. We've known about this game for months. The Jets and 49ers are intimately familiar with one another because of the Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh and those relationships, and obviously the ties to direct players that have been on both sides. Jeff Ulbrich, who played a decade for the 49ers, and all everything that's in the mix. But who has the advantage? Kyle Shanahan knows Saleh's defense like nobody's business. Saleh knows about Shanahan because they've been intermingled and intertwined for a long-ass time. And now they just had months to think about each other. I'm just kind of curious, heading into this game, is there an advantage either way? Is it nullified because they both just have such a deep knowledge of each other? What's the pulse here?
So typically when I look at two teams that are going to be pretty evenly matched, maybe not at every position, but just like, okay, here, advantages here, and you look at both squads, and you're like, all right, both teams have phenomenal defenses. Jets have the better quarterback. I'd say probably Niners have the better receiving core overall in terms of their weapons.
Yep.
I think the advantage lies with not just the home team, but the travel. So you got to bring in some other X factor. I don't know too many people, period, who like coast to coast road trips. Even though it's an extra day, it's at the beginning of the season, so it's like, who cares? You've had enough rest, so. Go get some jet lag, enjoy that. And I would say that would be the deciding factor. But the problem is that week 1 games are always wonky, right? Like, how about, and I just remember this, when the 49ers back in 2016 under Chip Kelly, the Niners won 2 games that year.
Mm-hmm.
Don't quote me on the opponent. I think it was the Vikings, but the Niners throttled the Vikings in week 1. It was like, I don't know, like 20-0 or something like that. And it was like, what? A Chip Kelly team shutting out somebody else? Or I don't know if it was a shutout, but it was a dominant performance. And that was one of only 2 games the Niners won that year. It was a week 1 game. So I'm just like, and there's plenty of other examples on how week 1 can be odd. Right? And so like, that's the thing where I don't know. It's like, I mentioned the 49ers offense is, historically under Kyle Shanahan gotten off to a little bit of a slow start first couple of weeks. But you've had weeks to prepare for that. So yeah, I don't know. Go back to the simplest thing. Hey, home team usually has an advantage. It's coast to coast travel. Nobody likes that. That's going to be my deciding factor because it's hard to pick anything else.
Which it isn't. That's not a bad deciding factor. And Saleh and Rodgers spoke about this today, about the unscouted looks that are going to come. And they said it's almost like a boxing fight. You got to survive the unscouted look. Hopefully the unscouted look isn't like a quintuple pass and it's an 80-yard touchdown. You're like, crap, that was one of the unscouted looks that we weren't prepared for. Hopefully you could just like survive it in the moment almost, and then keep rolling with the game and your preparation that was involved. But again, that part of the equation is no doubt unbelievably fascinating, and I've been thinking about it this entire time. So I can only imagine them, who Saleh revealed that Shanahan, as soon as the schedule came out, he said, I'm not allowed to say at the microphone what he texted me, but he said they've had some great back and forth a bunch of months ago. That now it's been a respect level. We're not talking to each other about that kind of stuff. We're just going to let it get settled down on the field, which should be pretty interesting. Wudi, you got one more. Go ahead.
Vegas has 2 different Kyle Shanahan defensive coordinators as the favorites to win their division. All right. An OC that is the second in his division to win that division. All these coordinators, man. I mean, the Eagles went to the Super Bowl, lost their coordinators, and then they fell apart, right? And that's now people are saying, "Oh, was it the coordinators propping up Sirianni?" This is really more of a general question. I am a fan of the game, and I think Kyle Shanahan is one of the league's best coaches. How does this man survive? Every year, his organization is completely gouged. Every year, coordinators on both sides of the ball go elsewhere. They take their favorite players with them, and they don't miss a beat. You referenced that Eagles game where they had Christian McCaffrey was QB. Right? People get hurt, and they don't even – they're still in the NFC Championship. The New York Jets get hurt, and the season was over in 4 plays. Like what? How does Kyle Shanahan survive every single thing that is thrown at him?
I think it's a bigger picture. Like for one, I'll allude to the offensive coordinator role. I'll start there. So Mike McDaniel, when he took off to Miami, the Niners didn't replace him. Kyle Shanahan just went back to calling plays. Now in the preseason, this is kind of a little weird. Clay Kubiak, I think he's like the run game coordinator. I don't know off the top of my head, but his brother took off too. I didn't do the Saints. So but anyway, he let Kubiak call the offense during the preseason, and Shanahan was like, I'm kind of bored. So just give him some exposure. But what the Niners have done before, and it's not the first time that they've done this under Shanahan, is that let's say one offensive staff member on the Niners is really good, really important. They did this with McDaniel. I'm going to take him from a run core. I think it was run coordinator for McDaniel. And then if people are looking at him, we're going to promote you to offensive coordinator. I'm still calling the plays. My name is Kyle, but you're now getting a pay raise, a title change, everything like that. That's helped on the offensive side. Defensive has been a little bit more tricky, but you saw the pipeline from Saleh to D'Amico Ryans. That worked out exceptionally well. Ryans had it pretty easy because he inherited Saleh's masterpiece, which I still claim 2020 was Saleh's masterpiece, even the 49ers were so banged up. They gave up a good amount of points, but their yardage given up was like nothing. So that's what helped solve. But anyway, D'Amico Ryans inherited a great unit, stayed on for a second year, made it better. And that to me was just a great transition. But Steve Wilkes was here last year and was one and done. Right. So that was something where you could tell he and Kyle Shanahan didn't get along very well. Some people said that Wilkes was a scapegoat. Others said, well, he didn't get the most out of a defense that was chock full of stars at every level. So it hasn't always been seamless, but going to the point I mentioned before about the bigger picture, you've got a strong front office. You've got a lot of good players. Sometimes you have a team that has great players, but isn't well coached. Niners are well coached. The locker room is bought in. And that makes everybody else's job easier. To your point on one thing that was kind of unique this offseason, Niners promoted from within for defensive coordinator with Nick Sorensen, who stems from the Seattle coaching tree. Saleh and Sorensen would speak the same language. But then the Niners brought in Brandon Staley as an assistant head coach who runs a 3-4 defense, totally different. What his role is going to be helping the defense is not quite clear, but at least maybe from a preparatory standpoint, hey, this is how we game plan. Here's some little tweaks that I'll throw in there. That'll be interesting to watch, and we'll see if that experiment works out. Granted, the Niners defense is stacked, so it's, you're making things work with really cool pieces, so that makes it easier. But I think it's really just kind of the reward from some early challenging, tough years that Shanahan and his staff had to go through back in 2017, 2018.
All right, Peter, finish us off here. Prediction time, baby. Crystal ball it. What's happening? Jets 49ers, Monday Night Football to finish off week 1.
Low scoring game. I'm going to do something. Let's see. I say predictions like this. It's not a low scoring game. I haven't even looked at the over under. No, I did. It was a while ago. I'm going to give home field, like I mentioned, home field and travel, but it's going to be a low scoring game. I'll go 2017 Niners.
Okay, there you go. That's kind of my gut, too, is I think with just two awesome defenses, and you mentioned the history of 49ers kind of starting off slow. Offensively speaking, this Jets thing, we don't know what it is. We have no idea what this offense, what it looks like or what it's supposed to look like because Aaron Rodgers got hurt so early. The current over-under, by the way, is 43.5.
I don't know. I don't place bets, but if I did, I'd say, let's go.
Yeah,
go
for entertainment purposes only, of course.
Yes. You got to throw in that disclaimer there. I can't tell you what to do with your money, but
yeah, of course.
If it were me.
Yeah, so that's awesome. Well, Peter, incredibly insightful. I wish the Jets and 49ers played more offense so we could just talk more because I always love talking ball with you, man. But I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, man. That was awesome.
Always fun. We could always do this every 4 years. or in February.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say that.
Super Bowl.
Yes. Whew. Well, I will cross my fingers. Hopefully we are talking in February. Definitely appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Call up anytime. Let's do a draft talk. Let's do free.
Yeah, we got to do something. We got to do something to make it happen. And I will just say this, and we're going to be doing this every week throughout the Jets season. I think a virtual agreement we could come with, even though you're 49ers people, we're Jets people, no injuries. Let's try to do a virtual handshake. The football world is a better place with complete health. Let's just kick each other's ass, have a good one, and then we'll go out for a pint after the game and enjoy the heck out of it, man.
100%.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next time here on the channel. Take care.